how to do helix knitting for beginners. Hi everyone, Norman here. Today's video is all about the wonderful world of helix knitting. This is a unique knitting technique that allows you to knit one row stripes without a visible jog or transition except for an initial little offset. You can do it with 2 colors, 3 colors, 4 colors, 5 colors, actually as many as you like. The technique always stays the same. But in this video I will also show you how to knit truly jogless 2-row stripes and how to apply that knowledge to achieve jogless stripes when knitting garter stitch in the round. Let's dive right into it. First of all, what is helix knitting and how does it work? So when you knit, you always knit in an upward spiral. So you finish one round and then you need to drag the yarn up one level and finish the next round. So you never have perfect little closed circles neatly stacked upon each other. And it's precisely this dragging up at the beginning of your round that causes the offset or jog here between 2 stripes. In helix knitting, you are basically creating a double helix to avoid this problem. So you knit one round in color A, but then you drop color A and pick up color B and knit another round. Then you drop color B and pick up color A again and knit one round. So you always alternate between these 2 colors. And if you never cross these colors when picking up, you will create this perfectly jogless double helix. Now the helix will have a slight slant, but when seen from afar, it will create these perfectly jogless stripes. Let's do this on proper knitting needles. Helix knitting can be done with double pointed knitting needles or circular knitting needles. It's the exact same technique and you can start right after your cast on or in the middle of a project. I just want you to have a stable base here. To start helix knitting, I prepared some stitch markers here. And in the first step, you need to divide your round by however many additional colors you want to add after your cast on. So I want to add these 2 colors. This means I need to divide my round in 2 equal parts. My round here has 36 stitches. So I need to place a stitch marker after 18 stitches. I'll add my first stitch marker here after 6 stitches and then another stitch marker here after 18 stitches or 6 stitches in here on this side. You could of course also use your gaps as orientation, but since we need to change colors around these stitch markers, I do feel that is not the best idea. So I'll start my helix by simply knitting across until I'm 1 stitch before my first stitch marker. Now I will pick up my new color and trap it here between working yarn and the work, and I leave a short little tail for weaving in later on. Then I knit 1 stitch. And this just trapped the tail here on the wrong side, slip the stitch marker, and now I can simply drop here this blue yarn, pick up my yellow yarn, and continue knitting. That's everything I did. Of course, you can pull the tail here through to the wrong side and continue knitting. You will have to weave in this tail the traditional way later on, but other than that, you simply join in a new color and knit across until you are 1 stitch before the next stitch marker. So you do your normal magic loop dance and knit across. Okay, So I'm one stitch here before my next stitch marker. I pick up the new color I want to join, trap it here between working yarn and my work, knit one stitch, slip the marker. Now I can drop this color and move it over to the side, pick up my new color, and simply continue knitting. So I'm gonna pull this tail here through to the inside. So this is the very, very simple preparation row for helix knitting. Just simple knitting. And then you knit up, and then you knit across until you come to the next stitch marker. Here at the next stitch marker, pay attention. This stitch here is very loose because here the blue yarn doesn't really secure it. So you can simply pull it out. So knit this last stitch carefully so you don't wear it out too much. And then whenever you come in helix knitting, whenever you come to a stitch marker, you slip the stitch marker, then you drop the color you've been working with and move it over to the side, pick up the new color, making sure you didn't accidentally twist it. This here is just the tail from joining in the yarn. So this is our new color here. It's the only tail that dangles down here. Pick it up in a way that it doesn't, that these colors aren't twisted, and then simply continue knitting until you come to the next stitch marker. Just do your regular magic loop dance here. And then when you come to the stitch marker, make sure that you knit that last stitch carefully, slip the marker. And now you can see that I have my 3 skeins here in front of me, and it kind of helps that. So this here on the skein on the left is always the active color. And when you drop it, you move that color over to the side and pick up the new color here from the left. And if you follow that rule, you will never twist these yarns. And then you continue knitting. And here on the other side, you need to be careful as well, because this stitch here isn't protected by the barrel of your knitting needle anymore, so you could just close it kind of. That's why here for the very first stitch, no, it did exactly that, knit carefully. And then you knit until you come to the next stitch marker. And basically this is helix knitting. So place 2 stitch markers and always, at least if you're knitting with 3 colors, always switch colors at the stitch markers. So I'm making my way over here to this side. And when you come to this stitch marker, you do the very same dance. Knit this stitch carefully, slip the marker, then drop the yarn, move it over to the side, pick up the new color, it's the only tail that's there, and continue knitting in this direction. Knit the first stitch carefully. Now, as you can see, you can easily use this technique to finish your project. However, you will probably notice rather quickly that it's actually not all that easy to maintain an even tension here around the stitch markers. So here's an alternative, or rather improved way to do helix knitting. So instead of knitting to the stitch marker, I want you to stop 3 stitches before the stitch marker, or rather stop 3 stitches before every color change. So I'm 3 stitches before the color change. Now I will slip the last 3 stitches. I remove the stitch marker. We won't need it anymore. And then I drop my color, move it over to the side, and pick up my new color. And then I continue knitting. And this has the added benefit that now my last stitches here are protected by the barrel of my knitting needle, and no matter how tightly I pull on the working yarn, I cannot close them down anymore. So it's a bit like traveling magic loop or so, I guess. So instead of using the stitch markers, you always stop 3 stitches before a color change. Let's do that one more time here on the other side to get the idea across. So over here is another color change, still marked by a stitch marker, and I will stop 3 stitches before that. Slip these last 3 stitches, remove the stitch marker, drop the yarn, and pick up my new color. And once again, it's so much easier to knit these stitches around the gaps. And from here you can continue using the exact same rule. Now pay attention. The color change will move with every round. So my color change is here now. It moved 3 stitches backward. So this means I can already change colors here. So that's the only thing that might be a little bit more annoying. Your color change is constantly moving backwards, and you need to pay attention. But other than that, I think this technique is quite superior. The only time when you wouldn't want to use this technique is if you have a very small diameter project with many colors. Say you only have 30 stitches or so in the round and you use 4 or 5 colors, then the slipping would mean that you basically knit 1 or 2 stitches with each color, and that quickly can be a little bit annoying. And then there's another benefit here, because now these colors are 3 stitches removed, so it's virtually impossible to cross them. If you do, it will instantly feel kind of weird, like you trapped the yarn or so. And so this is another benefit. So I feel this is the neater and better way to do helix knitting. So let's quickly use this occasion to take a look at what we've created. You will probably notice that the start of your helix, where you joined in the new color, is somewhat noticeable. So same here on the other side. This here is noticeable, and there's no way to prevent that. We will talk about ways to disguise it in a second, but for now it's something you need to accept. But other than that, if you move all the way around, can you spot a jog? Well, there isn't. That's the whole point. There isn't a jog. So if you ask me, if you need to knit a long project with 1 row stripe, say socks or so, then this little spot here where you have this one noticeable jog or offset is nothing compared to, you know, imagine you knit the whole calf of your socks with stripes, then this little offset is nothing compared to having a jog running along your whole calf. So I feel this is definitely something you can live with. You will quickly notice that helix knitting is fun. And it also has a lot of applications. So for example, a friend of mine uses Helix knitting to use up her sock scrap yarn. So she just collects all the little sock yarn scraps and then puts them together in one sock using Helix knitting, and you know, just knit colorful little stripes here. That is super fun. But apart from that, you are probably asking yourself a couple of questions. So first of all, can you only knit stripes that are one row high? And secondly, what about the start and end of the helix? This transition here, are there ways to fix this? Well, let's take a look. First of all, let's talk about 2-row stripes. Technically speaking, you cannot do 2-row stripes using helix knitting, except you can. So the trick here is you need to join in 4 skeins, but 2 in the same color. So let me show you. So here, where is my yarn? So let me show you. So you knit across the first needle. Here, careful at the gap. Drop the yarn and move over to the next needle. Pick up the next color, which is going to be the same color. Knit across the next needle. And so, as you can see, it's the exact same technique. I mean, the only difference here is that I am using double-pointed knitting needles, of course, but I wanted to show that this is possible as well. Now, I'm a big fan of double-pointed knitting needles, and I can tell you that doing helix knitting with double-pointed knitting needles is just annoying, because right now here I am not moving the start of my color change forward. I actually should do this. Now, with these few stitches, that would be just impossible. But of course, this risks creating ladders here with double-pointed knitting needles. And on top of that, the tails here, or the yarns, constantly get caught here. They're constantly catching the needle ends. So it is, well, an interesting experience, I think. But of course, you can do the same with circulars. It's still a bit annoying because it's so, well, it's very slow going. But with this little, well, trick, I guess, you can knit stripes that are 2 rows high with helix knitting. And there are a couple of fun applications of this precise trick I'm going to show you in a second. So, just wanted to show you the result. Of course, the start of your helix is noticeable, but the rest here is entirely jogless. So if you've always wondered how to knit jogless 2-row stripes, then this would be the way to go. I feel it's kind of annoying, but I mean, you could even do 3-row stripes if you join in 6 skeins in 3 colors. However, I feel this trick here has a couple of a little bit more rewarding applications I'm going to show you just now. Helix knitting can also be used to tackle another common problem. So far everything we've knitted was stockinette stitch. But what if you wanted to knit garter stitch? Well, if you've ever knitted garter stitch in the round, then you know that you always end up with this one annoying jog you cannot get rid of. Well, if you think about it, garter stitch in the round is nothing else. Now listen, garter stitch in the round is nothing else but stripes of knit and purl stitches. Because if you knit garter stitch in the round, you always need to switch between purl and knit rounds. So here I am knitting garter stitch with 2 skeins. So I purled across 1 row here, then I will slip these last 3 stitches here and pick up the other yarn, which is in the same color, and then I knit across. And so I'm not really switching colors, I'm switching stitches. And if you apply this very same principle, you can basically avoid the jogs of any 2-row repeat knitting stitch pattern in the round. So moss or seed stitch come to mind, things like that. So you stick to one color, but you switch stitches to create a truly jogless, well, in this case, garter stitch in the round. So here over on this side, I need to pay attention again. So 3 stitches, no, that's not 3 stitches, 3 stitches before the end of my round. I drop the yarn and then I continue purling across. So I always switch between these rounds. And then I can create totally impeccable garter stitch in the round without a visible jog. So here, this was the beginning of my round. Of course, there's this one little stair, but the rest is utterly flawless. Now, of course, let's up the ante. And what if we wanted to knit stripes in garter stitch? So I knitted this little wonky swatch here to show that if you switch colors in garter stitch in every row, you create something that, well, it certainly looks special, but possibly not what you want. So how can we fix this? To knit jogless stripes in garter stitch, you will thus need to apply the little trick from before. So I have 4 skeins here, and so here's one tail, here's one tail, here is one tail, and here's one tail. So let's knit one round here. So you need to join 4, and then you always need to read your knitting. So with garter stitch, you always follow after a purl row, you knit across, and after a knit row, you purl across. So here we have a purl row. So this means here in this yellow yarn, I knit across. Then here comes my tail. This means I drop my yarn, rotate my work around, and now here I need to read my knitting again. These are knit stitches, so this means I need to purl across this row, or this needle rather, this needle. Okay, so here comes another join, so I can move this yarn over to the side. And you will quickly notice that this is super annoying, but I'm going to show it to you because maybe you want to do it. So here, read the knitting again. These are purl stitches. So I knit across, and well, this will be super slow going. And yeah, decide for yourself if that is truly worth it. However, this is here, read your knitting again. These are knit stitches, so I purl across. As I was saying, this is the only way to knit jogless stripes in garter stitch. Or, well, I don't know if there are other ways, but this is, for me, logically speaking, this has to be the only one way. So, as I said, this is super slow going, but if you are patient, you will be able to achieve truly jogless stripes in garter stitch. So there will be only this one place where you joined in the stripes, so that's bound to be a little bit more noticeable, but the rest will be entirely jogless. I feel it's a fun application of helix knitting. Now here's the third problem I want to talk about, and it's the start and the end of the helix, and it's very noticeable, and so many people ask, well, how can I fix this? Is there a way? And the bad news is, technically speaking, there is absolutely no way around that. However, you can go full frontal attack and use it as a design feature, and that's what I tried to do in this little swatch here. So I started with a couple of rows of mosaic knitting. I have a full tutorial here on my channel that shows you how to do mosaic knitting. I'll link it to you up in here. The point here is that I used it as a design feature. So I have these, well, sets, or however you call this motif. And, you know, I just simply transition towards my helix here. Here, this is the start of my helix. So if you turn things around, you certainly notice that there is something going on here, but I don't feel you notice it in a bad way. Another method would be to simply cover it up. So if you're knitting socks, hats or so, then you can simply design a foldable cuff or brim. So here, this is my ribbing here, and then you just fold things over. You probably would have to knit a little bit more than my swatch here. And then you just cover the start of your helix up and no one is going to notice it. And on top of that, I mean, there's so many beautiful foldable cuffs, like with ruffles, things like that. So it's super cute on top of that. So this is another way to, you know, hide this little jog. Anyway, I hope I was able to show you how to do helix knitting and a couple of fun and interesting applications along the way. Comment below if you still have any questions, and as always, happy knitting and enjoy the rest of your day.